Hey, back once more for another fun-filled tier list. Like Amanda on Twitch, on the YouTube you're watching right now. Amanda Oink on Twitter. Today, the tier list that I want to do is the tier list where I believe in the casual play of the game with no add-ons, who the strongest to weakest killer is. I think there's going to be some differing opinions, obviously, as it is feel from both sides for everyone. But that being said, I think that the idea here is to implement the thought that the person who is casually playing the game wants to try to emulate the best players and is actively trying to do the correct things, but without add-ons. And so I think that I've crafted a tier list I'm pretty confident in, with regards to who the best all the way through to the worst is, with no add-ons. Um, I'm curious to hear what other people think. I mean, even still, even in the casual sense of the game with no add-ons, I think everyone knows that the number one and two are going to be Spirit and Nurse. And again, if we were talking best of the best, I would have Nurse over Spirit. But if we're talking casual players trying to emulate best of the best, I think that it makes more sense that Spirit is in the rank one spot. But they're basically a shared rank one spot. Bearing that in mind, this isn't necessarily who I think is the third best killer in the game. Uh, However, the third best overall killer for trying to be the best without add-ons and without being the best in the game, or the best player of that killer in the game. And normally, I've said this many times that I think Blight is actually probably the third best killer in the game, but we're talking not the best players. So, with that in mind, Hag. I think these three killers are all very strong, and people generally will lose to them. I do think that Hag, in the overall scheme of things, does fall a little bit when we're talking best of the best killers. Not by much, but definitely a little bit. Her zone control is insane. She does have the weakness of having to protect a zone and having to essentially 3-gen herself, or 4-gen, or even set up like a 5-gen web. Um, and there is counterplay to her with, if she picks up, you can pop the traps. If you have a flashlight, you can fizz out the traps. You can kind of bait her into doing a lot of weird things too. If she chases you, she's pretty weak in chase because she's 4.4. But I think Heg is the killer that probably gets the most kills after these two, in sort of a, again, casual environment with emulating the best killer. After that, even though you hardly see this killer at all, and I do think that this is the exact spot they would have on the best of the best tier list as well, it's Twins. If you're trying to emulate the way that the best Twins player is playing, you're going to be blocking out doors with Charlotte, chasing with Victor, probably downing a couple people, or at least downing one with Victor and trying to find another one with Victor to take advantage of the time that they lose by having to crush Victor or throw him off. And they're just a very strong killer with core mechanics of the killer that make them good for taking advantage of slugs, and like that winning position, snowballing it into a one game very easily. Usually I only do 4 killers in S tier, if even 4, and I think that that's where I am going to stay with this one too, because there's a couple other tiers, a couple other lists. Now we are also assuming that you're running probably the best perks because you're not running add-ons. With that being said, I think the top of A tier might be surprising. Maybe it's just me that finds this killer very strong with the base kit, but it's Doctor. I love playing against Doctor, and I really enjoy playing Doctor. Free tracking every so often is nuts. Taking people out of the game to, manage their time differently is nuts. And he can just do it almost freely. So those two things with really good perks, no add-ons again, as I said. He's just a very strong killer. He's nuts. I don't know what else to say. There's counterplay you can get in lockers and whatnot because you can hear the sound going off, but you're probably gonna hit tier 3 like at least twice a game if the doctors, if it's a reasonable size map and the doctor's halfway competent, which we are assuming that they're again a casual player, but probably decently good, like good enough to know what the good ones do and how to try and emulate it. I think Doctor is very strong. Next on the list would be Blight. Again, I think Blight is probably the third strongest killer to a Blight master. Now, to the average Blight trying to emulate that and get to that point, I think Blight is still obviously very strong, but falls a little short because of, a big learning curve, which that's not really something that, Doctor has as a big learning curve or Spirit has as a big learning curve. Honestly, even Hag feels like she doesn't have a tremendous learning curve. Twins don't really have a learning curve. It's pretty simple. You just chase. You pretty much just have to know what Victor does and how to, use Victor correctly because Charlotte is just an M1 4.6 killer. Nurse obviously has a giant learning curve, and even still, I think that, the casual Nurse player who's, again, trying to emulate the best players, who's played a decent amount of games on her but isn't quite a master yet, is still going to be that strong. Blight feels like he needs maybe not as many games as Nurse to get to the point of master, but he feels like you have to know tile sets a lot more. You need to know what you can and can't bounce off of. There's a lot of like glidey objects, also the mechanic of looking down to glide, because when you look straight forward, a lot of objects you'll bump into them as you normally would, but some of them you can look down and he'll just glide. The thing that usually you don't want to do, but it can be used tactically. There's a lot to learn about how to interact with objects and tiles with this killer that Nurse doesn't necessarily have to learn how to interact with tiles or objects as much. There are dead zones with Nurse, which you have to learn. You have to learn, the width of things. Pretty much, it's just all the teleportation aspect of the killer, what you can and can't do with it, and that comes with feel and time. This Blight feels like you have to do that, but to like a higher degree. Almost, you have to learn every single individual piece of the land. And maybe I'm misguided with Nurse too. Maybe that is the case with Nurse just because of dead zones. But generally speaking, with Nurse, you can look at something, go, okay, I need to right click for X amount of time to go through it. With Blight, you could be like, all right, I'm gonna right click it and I'm gliding like butter off the side of the car or something, and it feels like every very specific object has a very specific rule set to how Blight interacts with it. So that's kind of my reasoning for him being a little bit lower. The next killer for, again, casual play, I'm saying Pyramid Head with no add-ons. Obviously, Burning Man, Painting, Wax Doll are very strong, but we're not talking about those. We're talking about Base Pyramid Head, and Base Pyramid Head can still do all the same things to almost the same degree. You don't have to really worry about Torment. It kind of doesn't matter. It's like, if it happens, it's like, oh, cool, nice tracking. I know who's where. And like, obviously, it matters a little bit, but just that M2, you can bait out dead hard. You can hit them through vaults. You can hit them at pallets. You can, I don't know. It just, you can hit them going downstairs. You just can't hit them going up, I believe is how that works. Oh, man. He's super strong, and if we're also assuming the survivors are about the same skill level as you are, which it's never the case, but if we are assuming that, I think Pyramid Head has an easier time winning if you're a competent enough Pyramid Head. Again, we're considering that they're emulating the best players of these characters, and if you're knowledgeable and you've studied the killer even a little bit, you probably know to fake with your M2, wait for them to do a vault, the timing on the vault, everything, and you can pretty much just shut down survivors. The counterplay to Pyramid Head is to fake like you're gonna vault and then move to the side or whatever, dodge it, and then go back and vault while he's on cooldown. And it is a little fun. I enjoy playing against Pyramid Head as well because of that like mind game aspect of will he flick, will I flick, whatever. But he's a very strong killer. Okay. I think this we can all at least a little bit agree on a little bit. Maybe you move Blight up, maybe you move Doc down a couple. I think we can all agree that this seems pretty solid so far. I think that the next killer I'm putting on this list is maybe the most controversial placement I have. Putting Bubba as the 8th best casual no add-on killer. And the reason for that is, again, if we're assuming best perks, no add-ons, Bubba has a lot to gain from his chainsaw. Even through borrowed time, like Bubba can usually get a double hit down the person on the hook if they want to play that way. He very much goes feast or famine, and in the sense that the survivors are like, okay, we're either going to let this person die on the hook and do gens, or we're going to try and get them off the hook, and it becomes a very large snowball. Again, we're assuming everyone's about the same skill level. Even in the event that Bubba doesn't proxy camp the hook and does go away, there's still a lot of strength to the killer in the one hit down where he can speed up and go around corners with, the relative ease based on skill of the killer. He's just very strong. The chainsaw's very strong. I personally, as we all know, probably dislike Bubba the most out of every killer in the game from all aspects. And I think it's just he's similar to Spirit, but he's like better than Spirit to a new player anyway, to some degree, and that he's just very easy to snowball into a victory. And you'll see a lot of times you'll win with Bubba and you'll get Brutal Killer or Entity Displeased just because of the nature of the killer. Not being able to M1 enough for points, killing people too quickly or too early, survivor teams just crumbling under the sheer pressure of Bubba's existence and a hook state. There's a lot to do with Bubba and why I think he's actually like even better than a lot of people rate him, but in the casual sense of the game, he's kind of ridiculous. I don't know. I think he's going to be the controversial one for sure, or the more controversial one, especially when I put Deathslinger after him. I know a lot of people hate playing against Deathslinger. I think that there's a lot that playing against Slinger you can do. He's very strong, obviously, and he's very strong in the 1v1. Walk up, hit somebody while they're running away, shoot them, reel them in. They can't dead hard through that. They have to dead hard the shot if they want to dead hard. A lot. He kind of nullifies like a lot of perks. He also puts you in a mend state. Half the time we'll say, maybe not even half the time, but like he's even strong shooting over a pallet if you're uninjured because of the mend state thing, and that's kind of like a double hit to some degree anyway. His weakness being that he's 4.4. His weakness being that he doesn't have like a ton of map pressure necessarily. He's just strong in the 1v1, but that's usually enough. You get someone on the hook, and then again, if you're trying to play, correctly or emulate some sort of a strength of the better Slinger players, you're going to be using Monitor and Abuse. So you're basically a stealth killer, and he can shoot people going for unhooks. And it feels like against Slinger you need to send at least 2 people to the hook to unhook, which is obviously a tremendous waste of everyone's time from the Survivors team. I think he's fun to play against. You do get that notification when he's aiming at you, that little ringing sound, and it is what it is. He's a very strong killer. I don't think anyone's going to disagree that he's strong. You might think that playing against him is worse than Bubba, but from my perspective, I think that Bubba is a stronger killer than Slinger. And he has some similar strengths to Pyramid Head too. You can hit people through windows if you shoot them and reel them in. You can hit them at the window. But Pyramid Head can kind of do that to a lengthier degree, but with like not as much guarantee of it. They're honestly kind of similar killers to some degree. but that's why I think Pyramid Head's a little better. I mean, 4.6, and he can shoot literally through walls, whereas Deathslinger can't shoot through walls. He can only shoot through obstacles that are open or directly through the air. Um, Again, not much to say about Slinger on this list. I feel like I've illustrated enough of his strengths and what it feels like to play into him for why he's there. I guess my next pick might be a little bit controversial, and I'm actually going to say this is the end of the A tier as well. It's Frederick Krueger. Um, he feels, and I think after the nerfs, after the most recent nerfs and the board time changes and the wake up changes, I think he feels much weaker than he was before. And don't get me wrong, he's still strong, but I think people have a bad taste in their mouth from how Freddy was before. I don't think he's actually that big of a monster to deal with. Now, that being said, Tinkerer is great on just about any killer. Freddy with Tinkerer is pretty great too. You're probably going to have a rough time playing against him. Mobility is really strong. I think that it's, showed by, Spirit, Nurse, Hag, Twins, Blight all being up this way. Like, mobility is a very strong thing. That being said, slowing down to put the puddles that slow you down while wake up also keeping you awake for 30 seconds no matter what. Just lots of things that happen with the Freddy change that in my mind put him a little bit weaker, but he's still super strong. I don't think anyone can deny that Freddy is super strong. And as for controversial picks, I think Wraith is actually really good even without add-ons right now. I have a hard time putting him anywhere above any of these killers, despite the movement speed thing, despite how fast he is. Because the bell still gives away your position, and we're talking no add-ons, right? So uncloaking takes a bit of time, and the average survivor knows that windows and vaults are actually really strong into Wraith while stealthed. But that being said, Wraith is undeniably very strong. He was weak before the buffs, but I feel like the buffs kicked him into like high gear, into a new gear. He's honestly super fun, super strong, fun to play against. Outside of all seeing Silent Bell, but that's a different tier list for a different day, I suppose. Offers decent counterplay from the survivor side. If you know what you're doing, plus killer burn. If you see him uncloaking, you can killer burn him, which is super strong. Which you can killer burn Spirit and Nurse too, but it's less common. It's less likely to happen. Yeah, Wraith just feels like maybe all around one of the more satisfying killers to play against, as long as they're playing without add-ons or without incredibly disgustingly strong add-ons like All-Seeing Silent Bell or what is it, Coxcomb Clapper and All-Seeing. Yeah, it's staying in the same vein, same train of thought. Oni, he's pretty good. I think that this might be another controversial pick. I think a lot of people would have Oni in A tier. I think Oni is honestly like a little bit weaker than Wraith most of the time, except for in power, which you can snowball with Infectious pretty easily. Like Oni's definitely got his strengths, but I feel like this is a perfect placement for him from my perspective of an average player with no add-ons and playing against people of the same relative skill as you, because I'm an inexperienced Oni, but I usually win my games on Oni while being pretty bad at Oni, and I don't really run add-ons myself. So it's tough to say, but it feels like Oni has a presence about him that people are afraid of more so than he feels strong as a character. And I feel like it's really fun to play against Oni. His power feels fun to beat up, sort of like Blight. Like, it feels good to beat people that are running at you really fast that can just absolutely destroy you. I'm honestly, personally, really confident with my placement of Oni on a casual tier list, but maybe I'm misguided. Again, I want to hear people's feedback. I want to hear people tell me that no, you're wrong, Oink, you're a big dumb idiot or whatever. I this is my perspective of playing every killer as well as playing against every killer as what I would consider a mostly casual player. Um, yeah, I'm gonna leave the Oni talk at that and see what everyone's saying. I think Huntress on a tier list with add-ons is probably a couple positions up. Maybe I'd have to figure it out, but without add-ons, 4.4 killer, kind of weak. Obviously very strong in capable hands, but someone trying to emulate that has to learn a lot, and learning hatchet speed with base without add-ons feels weird and hard to do. Learning hatchet speed with oak haft or whatever add-on we're talking about feels like a different ball game, a different ballpark. Figuring out Huntress without add-ons feels like a weak thing to do, but not so weak that it's C or D tier. Like, she's definitely still a very strong killer. And I think something to say about this is pretty much every killer can succeed without add-ons. Pretty much. I think specifically there's only one killer who actually requires at least one add-on to have a chance at winning. But that being said, there's a lot of counterplay to Huntress. You can move around things. You can, lose line of sight. She's 4.4. If she's holding the hatchet, she's slowing down a little bit too. You know what I mean? So, like, there's lots you can do to Huntress, and breaking line of sight is probably the best play. Which also breaking line of sight with Nurse and just trying to play as weird as possible is the best play. Spirit, yeah, 50-50, baby. Coin flip. We love it. Anyway, move on. See, I'm putting Billy here because I do think Billy is a weaker version of Oni in the casual sense of the game, and actually, you know what? Probably even in the competitive sense of the game, or like the Masters of Killer sense of the game. My weird thing is trying to figure out if I think he's better or worse than Huntress. I almost feel like they're very similar in their strengths, despite him being 4.6 and having a one shot down, and being highly mobile, which is obviously a very strong thing. He still feels almost lacking as I play a lot of Billy now as a casual Billy player. He feels lacking in a lot of loops or maps even where Huntress can succeed. I think they're both extremely weak on Hawkins, for example, but they can do stuff on Hawkins. I think that I'd probably rather play Huntress on the game than Billy on the game. Shelterwoods, I'd probably rather play Huntress. What's another weird map? Raccoon City, they're probably both pretty bad, but I think I'd rather play Huntress. Maybe. It feels like they're almost in the same position to me, which is weird because they're two very different killers. But and I guess same thing goes for Billy as it goes for Oni and Wraith. It's really fun, or Oni and Blight. It's really fun to run around tiles and bait them into power. But I think it's weird that people make fun of Billy for M1ing, but really, like, M1ing on Billy is not only important but also kind of your only option a lot of times, especially in the casual sense of the game. I think that master Billies can, do crazy flicks and even mind games into baiting people into making wrong decisions at window vaults with the chainsaw. And I'm trying to figure that out myself as well. And until I do, I think I'm pretty comfortable with where I have him from versing many Billies and playing as Billy a decent amount. I think he's pretty comfortably there. Maybe people disagree that Wraith is stronger than these killers, but I don't know, man. Those buffs were kind of nuts. The next killer I have lower on the tier list is Demo, and he's kind of got the opposite problem that Billy has, where he's very strong at weird loops with his power. and playing against Demo is also satisfying. Like he goes to shred, you move, but that's also one of Demo's really big strengths is you bait out dead hard by shredding. And then half the time people just dead hard expecting it. They might zigzag left or right. Dead hard or using shred on Demo, but not actually shredding is such a strong tool that I think people undervalue and underlook um, as doing something because people tend to zigzag when he starts doing the clawing, and that's a reduction of distance. It's the same goes for Slinger when he starts aiming people zigzag, which is a reduction of distance. And so you can like fake shred a couple times, catch up to them, and either the dead hard's been baited out, you can bait out the dead hard, or they don't have dead hard and they're probably down. Also, using best for last on Demo is chef's kiss, beautiful, strong. Shred is very strong, very satisfying, very honestly, I want to say easy to use, like correctly. As like a casual player, as a beginner, Demo was very difficult to pick up, I think. But as I played him more, he's definitely become, in my opinion, quite a strong killer. All things considered, which is weird because we're at the almost at the end of my B tier for no add-ons, and here's Demo. But I do believe he's quite a strong killer. I think that I could maybe make arguments for why he's stronger than actually almost all of these killers. But I think all of these killers are, and actually I'll throw Plague up too. I think all of these killers have unique strengths that can very easily snowball games. Um, and I feel like you could reorder this any which way you want. Almost so much so that Freddy could even be here too. But he leaves a sour taste in everyone's mouth. So I think Freddy deserves the A spot at least for now. Current patch of the game, what 5.0.2 or something weird like that. The Trickster buffs were announced 2 days ago, and they'll be coming to the PTB very soon, just for a reference of time. But I'll get to Plague too. Plague is a killer who has a lot of confusion about her. She is obviously a very strong killer in capable hands, and anyone trying to emulate the strength of this killer, I think, has a tough time. I think Plague requires like a celestial body and a brain 3 times the size of my own to actually successfully play like efficiently. Like you can have a game here or there where you play her very well, but like to reference, Otts and his 103 or 108 game streak in a row with no perks, with no add-ons, like I don't know how that man does the things he does with the killers he does. I think Plague is very strong in capable hands like Otts's. But without add-ons, she's a rough go, man. She's a rough go. You pretty much have to rely on slugging with Infectious to win games, with Corrupted Purge. And I think that that's why she's the last on the B list, because other than like an altruistic team, which is ironic because you can't really heal versus Plague too much, but like a Flashlight squad or something, you can win against them with her. You're probably just going to run into the problem of there's too many people touching too many generators, and you can't control the zone well enough on most maps to stop it. And in my experience playing against Plague, I don't think any Plague has been like exceptionally powerful. I feel like they have a lot of pressure because of being broken and not wanting to necessarily give them another option for their Corrupted Purge. But I almost consider that an illusion of power because it still feels like nothing happens a lot of the time people are playing Plague. Maybe I haven't played against really strong Plagues, but we're not talking about really strong Plagues. We're talking about the average Plague. And that's why I think she's comfortably B. I had a hard time making this decision for the next killer because I believe even in casual play, this killer is quite strong, especially against what people say, but I still put them in C tier, which is where most people have them. And it's my favorite killer, the Pig. She has a lot of strengths, and I could talk about Pig quite extensively, I think, for a while. Um, but the fact of the matter is, for the most part, she's a 4.6 killer with, again, without add-ons, with a kind of a I don't want to say a bad power because taking time away from people is obviously very strong at any stage of the game, whether the hat's active or not. But if you're not running add-ons to make the hat go quicker or blow up quicker, you're probably not going to get a head pop. Like the survivor team has to actively be hindering themselves for you to get a head pop without add-ons that strengthen the hat. Whether that be by, we'll talk about an example. Two active hats, one person on hook, one person on generator, and the person on the generator stays on the generator and doesn't move. And say like the one of the person on the hook and the active hat person are on comms, and the person on the hook goes, yeah, this person's not moving off the generator, so the active hat person goes and has to get the unhook. Without Pig doing anything, there's a chance that head explodes still. Pig interference, which I think is something that you shouldn't necessarily do. It's mostly a waste of time. But Pig interference, you could down that person, bring them back over to a hook where they were near or at when they first were hooked with the hat to make it active, and then all of a sudden they're back at the spot that they started, and they already know that box doesn't work. Your head could explode, and I feel like head pops are mostly a survivor-sided issue with the survivors not playing into Pig correct, more so than Pig doing something correct. Obviously, RNG plays a factor, but you can get to those 4 spots in 2.5 minutes if the Pig's not chasing you, and yeah, if the Pig's not chasing you, you can get to those. Even with an unhook, you can probably get your hat off. Like, it's not always going to be the 4th one, and even if it is the 4th, if you hit a couple great skill checks on the way and do an unhook, and I don't know, vault a window or something for no reason, you probably still have enough time to get it off. So head pops without add-ons are few and far between. Ambush without add-ons is honestly significantly weaker because the videotape, or the 2 brown add-ons that make up the videotape, they're very strong. Ambushing quicker, you wouldn't think it would be as quick as it is until you play both sides of it without the add-ons and with the add-on. That being said, I still think Pig is like the strongest C tier killer, and she's on the cusp of B maybe in the casual play. And I think people trying to emulate the better players of Pig will use strong builds. Josh's build seems, like fun, but not strong necessarily from my perspective. Maybe it's just that I'm a worse Pig than him. But, I guess I was running this build before I was aware of CM Winter, but CM Winter's build of Corrupt Pop, Best for Last Tinkerer seems like the best build for Pig. It feels like it plays into her strengths. Best for Last requires you to use a videotape or those add-ons, though, to some degree to ensure that you're not wasting your stacks. So it's tough. Without add-ons, it's tough. You probably replace Best for Last for something else, and whatever that is, I don't know. I gotta stop talking about Pig though. I'm drawing on. I think Pig's a strong killer and stronger than a lot of people consider her, maybe, but still relatively weak in the grand scheme of strong killers. Next killer might surprise some people, but if you watch my stream, I think very highly of them in the fun department and very lowly of them in the strength department, and it's Nemesis. I think a lot of people are having problems with Nemesis as being like no-ed users or face campers or any of that stuff. We're not talking about that. I think Nemesis is a little bit add-on reliant. I think his M2 is quite weak at stage 1, and the best part about his M2 all the way through to stage 3 is the pallet breaking capabilities. He's very strong in the 1v1 as a result of being in stage 2, so the strongest thing is getting to stage 2. But without add-ons, it's harder to get to stage 2, kind of. It's still not terribly difficult, but giving distance for hitting people with a tentacle without getting anything is really weak. And also, if you grab a vaccine at the beginning of the game, he's still an M1, you throw a pallet, you get hit by a vaccine, you can vaccinate yourself while he's breaking the pallet, still gain some distance, and force him to either M1 you both times, or take 4 hits for 1 chase. or cause him to ditch. I've talked about this a bunch. I think Nemesis's tentacle on infection is super weak and underwhelming. Uh, Best for last is a great perk, baby. Throw hands all day. Only use the tentacle on your obsession and try and get your rank 2 by zombies as you're walking by. They're kind of useless anyway. Just do it. The add-ons I run are the one that give you more infection, or more power charge from killing zombies with your whip, and stealth after killing a zombie. Um, that feels strong. But without add-ons, I'm sure this killer requires a little bit of help, and I think it all stems from the M2, which people seem to hate. But like, people seem to think is strong, but I think is pretty weak. So I don't know. Fight me, no. Clown. Clown is like, it's so weird because I think Clown is strong too. I like, literally there's only, well, maybe 2 killers that I think, maybe 3 killers that are like extra weak. But Clown's bottles are really good if you know how to use them. The only problem is you want to use the bottle speed up for recharging add-on pretty much every time. And if you're not using add-ons, you're going to have 4 bottles and you're going to run through them pretty quickly. And if you don't make good use out of those 4 bottles, you're pretty much just a powerless M1 4.6 killer. I feel like there's not much to say. I know that the clouds are a little bit annoying to play against because they like hinder your vision, and that's probably the biggest strength of Clown, honestly, is making people second guess where Clown is, or being unable to see his red light totally effectively through the purple mist. But he's still a largely weak killer. Like, you don't find clowns that play, even a little bit fair, like just a little bit of proxying or a little bit of slugging. You don't find that clowns get 4 kills very often, especially a casual clown. I do think that there's room for growth with Clown with the yellow bottles and effectiveness of them, and over time he might raise up just the average casual player's tier list, might start implementing new strategies as people get overall better at the game. But for now, I think I'm pretty happy with Clown being pretty lowly in C tier. Next killer is Ghosty Boy. I love Ghostface. He's so fun. He, without add-ons, his Night Shroud recovery rate is so atrociously bad. It's, 36 seconds, I think, of a cooldown. Half the time you'll, stalk somebody, they'll reveal you. Maybe you have someone 99. The person you stalked that revealed you is like 50. Obviously, you can do things to make sure you don't get uncloaked. Again, we're talking no add-ons, casual gameplay, so casual players probably get revealed pretty frequently, pretty easily, without using too many tricks like staring through grates, like Dead Dog, the loop under the gallows that has the pallet with the truck and the boxes on either side. Like, you can stalk through that truck thing, or whatever you might want to call that, trailer, I guess. Stuff like that. You can stalk through windows, and you can stalk through cracks in the walls at Shack, stuff like that. I feel like the casual player is not going to implement those strategies too much. So for what it's worth, they're probably stalking from like a little bit of cover, maybe crouched. They're probably getting revealed. No power recovery. It could take upwards of 3 stalks to fully stalk somebody if the players you're playing against are, again, the same relative skill to you. And then you still have to M1 down them, so you want to be close. So if you do fully stalk someone, you have to hope that they don't have sprint burst, or you have to know that they don't have sprint burst, and hope that they're not like at a level with you where they are pretty good in tiles, so that they can reverse the effect of the stalk all the way back down and then nullify you, and then you wasted your time maybe twice, so 72 seconds to get somebody up there, and you gain nothing from it. He's very fun and very rewarding when you do well with him, but the weaknesses of his power are kind of insane. A really good strength to his power is something like, for example, I will run Devour Hope on Ghostface. I do not think that Devour Hope is an incredibly strong perk on him, but I think it's fun because the selfies are fun. Once you're at 3 stacks, you can use your power just to drop your red light and terror radius and chase and trick people. That's fun. Crouching is very fun around tiles. Sometimes it confuses people; they don't know what way you're looking. Um, he's definitely got some strengths and tools in his kit that you can mess around with to really mess with people. But overall, I think we can all agree that he's a relatively weak killer compared to a lot of other killers, especially without add-ons. The next character, honestly, this is where characters, in my opinion, start becoming a bit of a joke. As much as I absolutely love the last four characters, I think Legion is bottom four. Yeah, sure, he's annoying to play against. You have to mend. He probably runs Thanatophobia because he needs the help. But he can't kill you with his power. Every other killer, their power can be used at like every point in the game. Maybe not Plague on an already infected survivor, but like you get the point, right? Like he can't down you with his power. Its sole purpose is tracking and like one damage state, waste some time, but he wastes more time usually jumping between survivors than you do mending and going back to a generator, which is why Thanatophobia is so strong on him. But you don't like, Legion's kind of just for blood point farming, man. Like you can do well with him, but if you don't have add-ons to reduce the fatigue duration or to increase the active uptime of the power duration or decrease the cooldown of his power, he feels kind of horrible. I I don't know what to say. Like he's decent in chases with his power. If you use bamboozle, you can maybe trick people into the full duration of the cooldown of your recovery of your ability, but to down them. But you'd have to be pretty damn good with no add-ons and your knowledge of what window to bamboozle at what time to down them. It feels like a very niche situation. Doesn't help or doesn't stop Legion from being honestly one of the most fun killers. Like I mean I love playing everyone except Bubba, so it kind of doesn't matter what I say. But Legion was one of my first mains and super fun, and I'd love to see a little bit of buffs given to Legion, a little bit of love. Same goes for Trickster. The buffs I think are going to be massive. I think Trickster is going to be incredibly annoying even without add-ons. But currently without add-ons, Trickster feels horrible. Like maybe okay on a map like Shelter Woods, and every other map feels not great with just perks, no add-ons. I tried playing Trickster a lot with like not great add-ons or no add-ons when he first came out to see if I could do well with him, and no, like I can't. I think I'm I think I'm a pretty decent trickster, with add-ons. I do win a lot of games with him, but it doesn't help that he just feels so weak. Like it feels super rewarding to win because of how weak he feels. I don't know. He needs the help. I think they might be giving him too much help at face value right now. But only time will tell. The buffs are coming. He'll probably move up. He'll probably move up quite a bit with these buffs, if we're being honest. And now my bottom two killers. Michael Trapper. Trapper is the only killer I believe that requires an actual add-on, which is at the very least brown bag, which I think should be base. Michael has some insanely strong add-ons, but without any add-ons, he's kind of weak. I haven't tested this out yet because I don't have the perk on him, but I think that Michael might actually be one of the best lethal pursuer users, which might help him rise on this list next time I consider doing something like this based on casual play if I have lethal pursuer, the nemesis perk on him. Because getting out of tier 1 is the best thing to do and also probably the hardest thing to do. So using lethal pursuer on to know where people are for 9 seconds should give you enough time on most maps to get up to them and get your tier 2. I think lethal pursuer has the potential to make him stronger than, definitely Trickster and Legion, maybe even a few of these. I still don't see him being stronger without perks than Nemesis, though, if we're being honest. um Not much to say about Michael without perks. Like, you can snowball with Infectious on a reasonably small map, but if you get something like Mother's Dwelling, the chances of you hitting anyone with Infectious with your tier 3, with the timer of the tier 3 going down, and then chasing them and catching them, yeah, one of two things will happen. You might catch them, sure, down them, but the first person's probably going to get picked up, or you just lose them in the chase and they run away because they have like a ton of distance. They were already a distance away from you when Infectious triggered. He just feels very weak. Very cool. I think that they nailed the theme of Michael. Maybe even the most out of any licensed killer, or even their own non-licensed killers' themes. He's very cool. Feels very good. Oh man, Trapper without add-ons. You get one trap base, and what? There's four more on the map, or maybe five more on the map. You have either 5 or 6 traps, which you can only carry one of. You need corrupt intervention. You need to set up around a 3-gen. You need to waste time. You basically start the game with 2 generators left, and if you're not running add-ons, like, you're probably just losing. Like, let's get some love for Trapper. Hashtag justice for Trapper. Oh my god, I love Trapper. He's my second favorite killer, man. He's so fun to play. He's so rewarding to play. A big brain trap feels so good. Why why is the poster boy so weak? Why can't he just have 2 traps to start? And just remove the brown bag out. Just give him 2 traps to start. Allow him to carry 2 traps. There's so many issues with this killer, man. Oh my god, why can he step in his own traps? He's the trapper. He places them. He should know how to avoid them. I, I'm not saying it happens often. I just say it's dumb as hell that Trapper can step in his own traps. Like, I get it. I get that they're there, but I'm always under the impression that a killer who is named after the thing they do would have enough mindfulness to avoid being caught in the thing that they do. Maybe that's a little bit wishful thinking, though, because Amanda did survive the reverse bear trap. She was in the reverse bear trap at one point, but I don't know. This is my tier list of casual strength with no add-ons. I am reasonably confident with it. Looking back, maybe something I would change after having come up with all of this is just the position of like these 4 killers. I feel like again, this whole list, the whole B tier can move a decent amount in different ways, but these 4 feel like the most different but the same in such a way that they all have very good strengths that exist differently from each other in varying degrees. Like, Demo could be ahead of Oni, maybe. I think this is the whole tier that feels the most fickle, or the most I guess tangible with where placements are. Anyway, that's the tier list. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to my opinion. I want to hear your opinions. Tell me what you think about Bubba, about Oni, about Nemesis, about anyone else who's on this list in a weird place. I'm keen to hear what people have to say. Anyway, until next time, thank you.